Another edition of the Wrap Up Show with John Schaefer and Jim Russell. We're presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. We've got a very interesting report out about the possibility or the desire of the Padres to move Eric Hosmer. Before we get into it, a reminder, if you're looking for year-round Padres content, we're talking about exclusive content year-round. You see Jim. You see him. Hit the subscribe button for us. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified. We've got you covered throughout free agency, hot stove, spring training, 2022. Any news that breaks, we are here for you. So subscribe, like these videos, and follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Again, the report from Kevin Acee, the Padres' intent on moving Eric Hosmer's contract. Let's tell you about our title sponsor, though, Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. You know, we've been saying this. If you're shopping for auto, home, renters, or life, and you're in San Diego, we ask you to consider Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance. If you like the wrap-up show, to support the show and Mark, he's got a decade of experience helping people like us find insurance products. And what separates Mark from the competition, trust us, customer service and communication. So if you have insurance needs, we ask that you click the link in the description down below. You'll get to Mark's website. He can help you and your family with your insurance needs.
And if you want to reach out to Mark, it is extremely easy to do so. All his information is above my head right here. Phone number and email address, mnimitz@farmersagent.com, mnimitz@farmersagent.com. Tell him that the wrap-up show sent you.
Yeah, I like that. All right, so the report in the UT from Kevin Acee is the following. He writes this as Jim pulls up his tweet. And he's reporting because the GM meetings are in Carlsbad this week, right here in San Diego. He's talking about the Padres offseason and Preller. His most likely move in that arena this offseason is another attempt to move Eric Hosmer and the majority of his remaining $59 million in salary over the next 4 seasons. Preller tried unsuccessfully to deal Hosmer in July, and word from within the organization has been for months that the front office is intent on ridding the team of that contract. Preller almost certainly remains unwilling to attach Robert Hassel III to Hosmer, but the expectation is he will continue to shop a combination of cash and prospects. So, Jim, he couldn't do it in July. Can he do it this offseason before 2022?
That's going to be tough. I think we all know Preller wants to get rid of this contract. This contract is weighing this team down in the sense that they really don't have much flexibility. We talked about it today on the radio. If you add up all the contracts, including what the players who are arbitration eligible are going to get next season, you're looking at around north of $180 million committed to this roster without any moves made. The only moves that would be made would be that you put Mike Clevenger on the active roster. That's it. You know, a couple other pitchers, but as far as like improvements to this roster go and additions, that would be the only one. The only way that I feel like Preller can go out and make some moves is you get rid of Eric Hosmer. Now, you look at that contract, there's $59 million left. We know how hard he tried to get rid of Hosmer at the trade deadline. The report from Acee about how bad they want to get rid of Hosmer and his unwillingness to attach Robert Hassel might be a problem here. Now, do I want the Padres to rid themselves of Eric Hosmer's contract? It's time. This has not worked here. It's not working here. The fan base does not like Eric Hosmer. The majority of the fan base, I feel like, is just done with Eric Hosmer. The debacle at the trade deadline. Preller can say that the relationship's good there. I don't feel that. I don't feel their relationship is good between the Padres and Eric Hosmer, especially with him knowing how hard they tried to deal him at the trade deadline. When they were still in it, they still led in the wild card race. You know, the season ended at the trade deadline. They would have been in the wild card. So trying to trade a clubhouse leader, you know, we talked to Skip Schumacher and we asked him about Eric Hosmer. This dude is a clubhouse leader, and you try to trade him at the trade deadline, and people can give PC answers, but the fact of the matter is it affected that clubhouse one way or the other. So that relationship is done. It's over. You got to get rid of him. It's now figuring out how you can do that. And you might have to eat a bunch of his money to do it, or if you want to eat as little money as possible so you can go out and make moves like Nick Castellanos is out there now. You want to go get a pitcher like Marcus Stroman. You want to go get a guy like Starling Marte, right? Then you might have to attach a Robert Hassel. Is that something I think Preller wants to do? No. Is it something that he probably would have to do to get rid of Hosmer? Yeah, maybe.
Okay, a couple of things. And I think everything you said is accurate. I'll say this, that because he's owed 60 million the next 4 years, it's 15 million per year on your luxury tax threshold. I'm with you. I think the experiment by and large is over. An 8-year deal. I mean, let's be honest. And
Yeah.
AJ Preller's gotten some things right. He got this wrong. I mean, 8 years for Eric Hosmer based on the production in the first half of the deal. You can only imagine what the second half of the deal is going to look like. It's not going to be better. And if it's worse, you can only imagine how the fans are going to feel about Eric Hosmer in a Padres uniform. Now, could they salvage the relationship? I'm with you. It's going to be hard. I would give Bob Melvin a better chance of salvaging it in that clubhouse than Jace Tingler would have to salvage it. But you're right. I think it's a fractured relationship. There's a couple of options. And of course, the nuclear option is you just cut them. You still owe the 15 million average annual valuation on your luxury tax. So if you think you're a better baseball team with Adam and Jay Cronenworth at first and Adam Frazier at second, and that's a better way to win baseball games, I find it unlikely, but it's at least a possibility, and it might be more of a possibility after 2022. To your point on Hassel, you're only moving a player of that caliber if you're not trying to pay a bulk of the remaining 59 million, right?
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah.
If the Padres, and I think Peter Seidler has proven that he's committed to winning, if they're committed to keeping their high-level prospects intact and in the organization, you can move mid-tier prospects and pay more money on the deal. So I would believe that if they do ultimately move them, I think they're going to eat a larger percentage of the deal, but they'll do it by moving lower level prospects. I think if it is a hassle, if it is name another Luis Campisano, then maybe you don't
TJ
eat as much
Abrams.
money. No, it's never going to be Abrams, and I don't think it's going to be Hassel either. To be honest with you, I think at the end of the day, and maybe you benefit from the CBA, not in the short term, but if there's that salary cap floor that has been thrown around where teams have to spend a certain threshold, then maybe there is more of an interest in a contract like Eric Hosmer, like what we see in the NBA. At the end of the day, very bad deal, but you can't concern yourself with that right now. You have to put your organization and team in the best chance to win in 2022. And we talked about this today on the radio as well. As you said, it's got to be addition by subtraction, because if you don't get rid of Hosmer, maybe you can move a Myers. In the short term, it frees up $20 million. But you're not adding Castellanos or Seiya Suzuki or Marcus Stroman without eliminating one or both of those contracts. I mean, I can't definitively say it, Jim, but I feel pretty confident in saying that that trio of player and that caliber of player is not coming to San Diego with $180 million already tied up for 2022.
Yeah, and the other problem is they have a log jam on the infield. You traded for a second baseman when you already have a second baseman,
right?
And you need to play him, or else that trade looks like a waste. And you're not going to put him in the outfield because this guy has no pop, like zero extra base power in Adam Frazier. So you're dealing with a flawed roster. But if you get rid of Eric Hosmer, you can free up some space to play Cronenworth at first base, or Frazier at second.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is you have this guy here in Eric Hosmer who is making $20+ million, and you got to play him. You're not going to put him on the bench. You're not going to have a $20 million bench player. That's just not going to happen. That's just idiotic. So there are the financial aspects of it. As far as you get rid of Eric Hosmer's deal, you have much more flexibility theoretically, and you get rid of Eric Hosmer theoretically, it helps with your roster, with the logjam you have in the infield, with a guy you brought over in a trade last year that seemingly does not have a spot to play. Like you're just not going to put him in the outfield in left field. You're just not. He should not be your everyday left fielder, Adam Frazier. And you have an all-star second baseman in Jake Cronenworth, ironically, is a really good first baseman as well. And he's a really good shortstop. Like when he played in the all-star game, guess what position he played? He played first base. Guess what position Adam Frazier was? Second base. So
Yeah.
you have options here. But it all comes down to what's going to happen with Eric Hosmer. And yeah, I'm with you. I don't think, nor do I think they should attach a Robert Hassel to get rid of Eric Hosmer. Now, they might not have a choice if they really, really, truly want to just get rid of this deal, get rid of Hosmer, try to eat as little as money as possible. But the other option is, and it might, be a tough pill to swallow. Just cut him, right? Like what you cut him, you obviously are going to have to pay that money. If you trade him and you would have to pay 80% of that deal, what is the point of doing that and then attaching a Robert Hassel when you could just cut him, keep Robert Hassel, and then you just pay the rest of the deal? If you're going to go already 80% of the deal paying it to his future team, why not just keep your prospect and then just pay the full amount?
I think the answer to that, in my opinion, is you probably wouldn't pay 80% if I was guessing. So let's say you were paying half of the deal, $30 million. Well, it frees up $30 million over the next 4 years, $7.5 million per year. The cutting nuclear option that we talked about earlier, and by the way, I'm a proponent of it, arguably, maybe more so after 2022 when he's owed $13 million a year.
Because sorry to cut you off there, because there's one thing that we haven't talked about. He has 10-5 rights, so he can veto a trade, which was...
Does he have 10-5 rights this offseason or next year at the deadline?
Well, he's already a 10-year player, right?
But he's not a 10-5 player with San Diego. He doesn't have 5 years in San Diego.
You're right.
Right.
Hey,
so he's not a 10-5 player. So
this is the only chance you'll get this offseason.
Correct. Unless you want to cut him, because you can cut any player.
So you don't have a choice is what I'm saying, is if you try to trade him next offseason, he can veto a trade.
But I will say that the issue remains with cutting him is that you have not impacted your ability to spend this offseason. Like, let's say we found out right now Eric Hosmer's been cut. Well, your payroll is still $180 million and higher than that in the luxury tax. Now, if they trade Eric Hosmer and a team takes a percentage of that percentage of that money from you, it does free up some capital. So I think that's the biggest factor in potentially. I mean, obviously the primary focus is to move him. I mean, if he's not going to play here, the primary focus is to move him. If you can't move him at some point, if he's hurting you and preventing you from winning at the level you want to win at, then you maybe consider cutting him. And honestly, the thing with Hosmer is, I would say this, that if he was here on a 2-year, $5 million deal the last 2 years, nobody would even care. If he was a platoon bat at first base and he was paid, it was a 3-year, $13 million deal. Nobody would. It's just such an albatross of a deal that magnifies it so much greater. It's not that Eric Hosmer is the worst player that they've had over the last 4 years. He just hasn't been productive with what they've wanted out of him. He hasn't been a good defensive player. He has not hit for power. You had the issues that popped up in July. He's still owed $60 million. It remains the elephant in the room. And it's going to continue to potentially prevent this team from winning at the level that Padres fans want them to win at. That's, for me, ultimately the problem. There's first baseman out there, Jim. There's platoon options for them as well. But are you really platooning a guy that makes $20 million a year?
No, you're not. And to your point about if he was making $5 million a year, like a 2-year, $10 million contract, I still think there would be a lot of angst against Eric Hosmer. Like, look at Tommy Pham the last 2 years. He wasn't making a lot of money, but there was a lot of angst towards him because he was not performing. I feel like the same way would be for Eric Hosmer regardless. It's just magnified even more because of his contract, right? So he's not playing well. He's not contributing to the team on the field. And the dude is owed a boatload of money that is preventing you from going out and potentially getting pieces that will actually impact your roster every day on the field. Like that, it's like the double, triple whammy here. It'd be one thing if he was just like Tommy Pham. You could bench Tommy Pham. You're not like benching a $20 million player. You're benching a guy that's making less than $7 million. You bench Eric Hosmer, you have a $20 million problem on your bench. And oh, by the way, dude is going to be here for the next 4 years.
And he just doesn't make sense. And also, let's say, again, theoretically, Hosmer's on board with it as a clubhouse leader. He's a bench piece for the next 4 years, but why would you have him on your bench?
This
He
isn't
doesn't help you in
basketball.
double switches because he doesn't help you defensively. He doesn't hit for power.
Mm-hmm.
So you're batting him with 2 on and 1 out in the 8th inning to serve what purpose? I mean, he's been a relatively decent RBI guy, but he also grounds out a lot. And
Yeah.
why would you want him batting in those high leverage spots, 7th, 8th, 9th innings with men on base, 0 or 1 outs, with the possibility of him grounding into double plays? I mean, the bench, it's another issue. It's not Eric Hosmer's fault the bench isn't good. He wouldn't make the bench better. But to your point about the roster construction of AJ Preller, he needs to upgrade his bench. And moving Eric Hosmer to his bench is not upgrading his bench. Upgrading his bench is finding a legitimate power bat to strike fear in the opposition, that makes you think twice about the moves you make from a managerial perspective with who you're pitching in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. And they don't have that. Now, that might
Mm-hmm.
change this offseason. The problem is they have a number of areas they need to address. Back end of this rotation, their bench, potentially first base, left and right field, their bullpen. So yeah, they got a lot of war coming back. You
The
saw
catching spot.
the catching. I mean, they got a lot of wins above replacement coming back, maybe third
Mm-hmm.
most in baseball. But then again, this is the beginning of the offseason. And if they don't change the complexion of this roster at all, other teams are going to be adding war, adding
Mm-hmm.
free agents and players, right? Improving their rosters. Padres are coming off a 79-win season. Are you content with them running it back? Now, maybe it pays off. For 4 months, they were one of the better teams in the National League. Do we trust those 4 months can be stretched out to 6 months under Bob Melvin?
Maybe, but again, like going into seasons with ifs and hopes and maybes with the same guys that you just saw what happened in a full 162 game season that won you 79 games. Maybe they don't have a choice, right? Maybe they're going to have to try to, and who knows? Maybe Preller and maybe Seidler, is like, screw it, go over the threshold, 200 plus million, let's go. Sign Castellanos, give him 5 years, 150 million. Who cares? Like sign Marte. Like maybe he might do that. No one has reported that Seidler isn't going to do that, but it's highly unlikely. And so the only way you can potentially get those guys or be in the conversation instead of trying to find like the 1-year deals at the very end of free agency is getting rid of Eric Hosmer. That's how you do it.
I really think it's their only. I mean, there's a couple of other, like if it's a game of chess, Will Myers would absolutely create short-term flexibility. You talked about on the radio earlier today. It doesn't solve long-term issues. It creates short-term flexibility. Adam Frazier, if you could move him, creates a little bit of flexibility. I think he's owed $7 or $8 million this next year. There are some bullpen pieces that are maybe going to get paid 3 or 4 or 5, but then again, you'd have to replenish because they're big league arms on your 26-man roster. Typically, you replace a $3 million arm with a $3 million arm if they're not coming from your system. And we saw the system this year, and there wasn't a lot coming up that was graduating and helping them in the big leagues. So, I mean, there's work to be done. And AJ Preller is obviously the guy that is in the business of getting work done. And it starts this week, I think, with the GM meetings. So we'll see what he can accomplish.
It just feels like Hosmer is this roadblock and it's in the way and it's preventing this team from creating a better roster, like filling out more positions of need with, like really good players instead of trying to find scraps like they did last year or like expecting the farm to actually come up and produce right away instead of giving them maybe a little more time and ease them into the process more here. It just feels like he is a roadblock that needs to be removed. And until then, I don't know how much Preller can truly do, how much he would want to do. And that's why that's why he wanted to get rid of Hosmer so bad this past year, because you get rid of Hosmer, all right, and you essentially upgrade getting Joey Gallo, a guy who does not have a massive contract, and you have more flexibility in the offseason. And you also have a better roster construction because you already brought in Adam Frazier to play second base, and you know that Cronenworth can play first base. Joey Gallo can play some first base as well. Like, that was, I'm sure, his thinking. It just, for whatever reason, it just didn't work. And now they are definitely trying their hardest, I feel like, to make sure that they get rid of Hosmer.
And it's on Preller. I mean, Preller signed the $144 million deal.
Yeah.
Hosmer could only sign it if a team was offering it to him. Now, you can overpay to win. The problem is they haven't won these first 4 years at the level.
Right.
Yeah, they were expected to win it. 2020 notwithstanding, we know the pandemic year. He only played half that year. He was hurt, had the thumb injury on a bunt, had a GI issue. Only played half that year.
It was like, oh, he had a great year. He played 30 games.
Yeah, he played 30 games. I mean, no, it's on Preller. It's on Hosmer as well. That combination, and Preller's got to clean this thing up, hopefully, this offseason. All right, here's the reason to subscribe. Again, year-round exclusive Padres content. We will have that for you. Coming up this week, Ken Korak, longtime voice of the A's, will join the Wrap-Up Show YouTube channel to talk about Bob Melvin and what he expects the impact of Bob Melvin to be here in San Diego with the Padres. So again, if you haven't subscribed, hit that button down below. Hit the notification bell. You see Jim. Hit that button down below. Hit the notification bell. If you like these videos, hit the thumbs up and follow us on Twitter as well. Yeah, smash it. There you go. And follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Until next time, you've been watching the Wrap-Up Show, presented by Mark Nimitz at Farmers Insurance.